So Akala, to start with, what was the inspiration behind the album Doublethink and basing a concept album on Orwell's 1984, Zamyatin's We and Huxley's Brave New World?
Basically, for me, it was really the it was reading the books initially, and the resonance I felt those books had with my reality, with the way in which the world I live in is governed and run, and the kind of psychosis of existence, I suppose. And I know tons of scholars have written dissertations on what type of totalitarian state they believe we live in, and it does feel a little bit like we're somewhere between 1984 and Brave New World, and there are elements of both those novels that resonate with our reality, and I think most people would acknowledge at least that to a degree. And so for me, it was the incredible use of fiction as a vehicle for almost prophecy, and they're just great stories anyway. But then the resonance that I felt they had with my reality and the world's reality really crystallized ideas that I'd already been thinking about to some degree.
Which themes and ideas in particular? Because listening to the album, there's so much politics on that. You know, war, control, conformity, racism, hate, identity, fear. I mean, what in particular did you take from Orwell?
From Orwell particularly, the concept of double thinking, which I thought was just, I believe the exact definition, if I can remember off the top of my head, was to accept two mutually contradictory beliefs, to tell deliberate lies while believing them to be true, and to forget any fact the moment it becomes inconvenient. Well, I mean, if that isn't the perfect summing up of leadership in the 21st century, I don't know what is. I mean, the way in which kind of we're presented conflicts with different countries, and the way even in celebrity culture, where this week we love this person and the next week we hate them, and we've forgotten the fact that they were the darling of the country 2 weeks before, and now all of a sudden they're like the baddest guy in the world. All of that kind of stuff. Doublethink, the concept of 2 minutes of hate, I thought was incredibly powerful. The way in which we're told who we should hate and who's the enemy and who's the bad guy and who's respectable and who's the good guy, which rarely has anything to do with the deeds of those people, but really just appearance and appearing to be respectable, or depends on which television channel you watch or what newspaper you're reading. Depends who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. And with Huxley, the main concept that got me was the use of entertainment and sex as a tool for control. Because as a hip-hop artist, I see that firsthand, and I see how young people being bombarded with images of sex every 2 minutes, all day, every day, is shaping people's ideology. Rap dictated the way a generation would wear, what haircuts they would get. So logically, that extends to people's philosophy, people's thinking. And if all of the music you've grown up listening to tells you that if you don't sleep with every woman moving, you're just absolute rubbish. And if you're a woman, if you can't afford Gucci shoes and you don't push up your chest and kind of also have sex with every guy you see, you're also a bit of an idiot. And that concept is obviously what Brave New World's all about. So that really was perversely comical. Not in a nice way, it was funny, but it was like, this actually isn't funny, because this is actually what's happening. We've got to a stage in hip-hop where there are videos that big corporations are putting out with women having sex with guns in their video, and it's just like, man, this is kids' entertainment, man. I'm not being sensitive, I think it's genuinely inappropriate for a woman to be making love to an AK-47 in a video that gets played at 1 in the afternoon. But that's just my opinion.
So, I mean, one of the main themes that sort of comes through then is that need for independent thought.
Yeah.
Because I mean, on some of the songs in particular, I'm thinking sort of Psycho and XXL, that sort of idea that it's one extreme emotion 1 minute and then the complete opposite the next is sort of critical of the album. Yeah,
and I think that's how we are. We're human beings. We're not happy and calm all the time. That's the nature of our existence. And I think that that's cool. It's cool to be honest and admit that sometimes you feel really sensitive and sometimes you feel really angry. And again, it's kind of, the album speaks about how these political ideas and philosophies relate to hip-hop music also. So to the type of hip-hop music that is acceptable or desirable, not for fans, but for major record labels and radio stations and TV stations. And hip-hop is, of course, now, or rap music is one of the most pro-capitalist forms of entertainment ever to exist. And I don't think most rappers have realised the irony of that.
I mean, you've said before actually that you think sort of hip hop is a great political language and a really good way of getting things across. And you feel it's been degraded?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think this is, to anyone who's grown up on hip hop, this isn't at all controversial. I mean, rap or hip hop music came out of following on from Gil Scott-Heron and the Last Poets and Miles Davis and Jimi Hendrix and James Brown. All of the early rappers grew up listening to those guys. Consequently, you had people like KRS-One, who went on to become Professor of Philosophy at Yale University, who many people would still say is the greatest hip-hop artist of all time, who he brought about a brand called edutainment, where he would go around, he'd do a show, he'd do a lecture, and it was real intellectual stimulation. Then Public Enemy came out, and they caused a worldwide storm for a lot of their views and a lot of the things they said. And I think at that point, it was realised in America, and I mean, even the media would acknowledge that, or a lot of the big media corporations, that Public Enemy were really inconvenient, because they were making people think. And they were making young children from Oxford and Cambridge realise that they weren't any different from kids in the ghetto in America. And if you want to keep people believing that they're different and divided and ultimately controlled, that's a really inconvenient thing to have happen. And hip-hop was speaking in a way that was so direct, unlike reggae music and blues and gospel and jazz, which were quite allegorical, quite metaphorical, brilliant forms of music. And obviously with later people, Bob Marley, Gregory Isaacs, it was quite direct. But hip-hop was so direct, and because of the speed of it, you could say so much that it was a terribly inconvenient form of music. And so then we started to get bombarded with all this kind of, I'll kill you, I'll shoot you, I'm a gangster, I'm a gangbanger. I'm not going to talk about where any of the guns actually come from. I'm just going to talk about shooting and killing and selling drugs, and then it went on to misogyny. None of those rappers, or no people from the hood, make the decisions about what gets on the radio, or make the decisions about what kind of rappers were going to be signed to record deals, because they didn't own any of the labels. And so the direction rap has taken has not been defined by the hood or by the hip hop community or by fans. It's been defined by corporations.
So in that media control.
Yeah, media control, but also company control. It's not. I mean, it's logical. If I can use the power of something that's cultural to sell more trainers, or to sell more jewelry, or to sell more cars, and I own these companies and I own a record label, what am I going to do? It's not even like some crazy crackpot conspiracy where 5 guys are sitting in a room saying, how can we destroy hip hop? I don't believe that's what it is. It's logical. These things are businesses. If I elevate pop stars that tell people to not believe in materialism, then they're going to stop buying so much material. I mean, every kid in England that went to the club for like the last 10 years wanted to buy a bottle of Cristal. Why? Because they heard that in a rap record. They'd never heard of Cristal before. And this became an aspirational product that was fed to them through commercial rap music.
You see yourself as much more of an edutainment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I think that's what hip hop is. I think it could be argued that a lot of this stuff isn't hip hop. It's a corporate product, like a fizzy drink. It's not fruit juice. It's a fizzy drink. It's not any good for you. It doesn't nourish you in any way. It's just some company decided they want a fizzy drink that tastes sweet as it goes down and makes you feel really sick, and so they manufactured all these kind of guys to come and do that for them.
So I suppose what you're trying to do is keep the art in the...
But not just me. I don't want to act like, I don't want it to be presented that I'm an exception, because I'm not. There's millions of guys just like me all over the world. In fact, there's one standing right here from Brazil, MC Marechal, who are doing exactly the same thing I'm doing, who are educated, self-respecting young men, some of whom have come from even far more challenging circumstances than I have, had far less access to education, to wealth, to opportunities than I have, and are still refusing to be the stereotype, refusing to play in to the stereotype, even though they could, and they could be rewarded financially for doing that. So I don't want it to be presented that I'm an exception anyway, because I'm not. And if you look beneath the surface of commercial hip hop, there's a whole culture all over the world, from the Middle East to South America to Africa to Asia to Europe, of young people that are still doing what was being done in the 80s.